If I can't have you, no one will. The words sliced through the Gangnam night like a knife, cold and absolute. Adanna's heart hammered against her ribs as her heels clicked frantically against the wet pavement. Luxury boutique windows blurred past, their golden lights reflecting off puddles that mirrored her terror. Her black blazer clung to her shoulders, damp from the mist, and her leather portfolio clutched against her chest felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds with each desperate stride. Behind her, Jaewa's voice grew louder, closer. You're my wife, Adanna. You'll always be mine. He didn't look back. Looking back meant hesitation, and hesitation meant his hands on her arms again. Those same hands that had gripped hard enough to leave fingerprint bruises hidden beneath her sleeves 2 days ago. Her wrist throbbed where she twisted free, the small scar there burning as if in memory. The metallic taste of fear coated her tongue despite the cool night air filling her lungs. The street curved ahead, lined with exclusive establishments glowing behind tinted glass. Members-only clubs, private galleries, places where Seoul's elite conducted business behind closed doors. She needed sanctuary. Anywhere. Her visa expired in 3 weeks. Her phone had 15% battery and she knew exactly 4 people in this entire country. 3 of them were Jaewa's family, and the 4th had stopped returning her calls when the divorce papers were filed. A doorway appeared on her right. Amber light spilling onto the sidewalk through frosted glass. No gaudy sign, just elegant doors with polished brass handles and 2 men in impeccable black suits standing like sentinels. She didn't care if it was a restaurant, a private club, or someone's residence. She ran toward it. One of the guards stepped forward, hand raised. Miss, this is a private. Please. The word tore from her throat. Polished professionalism shattered into raw desperation. Please, someone's following me. The guard's eyes flicked past her shoulder. His jaw tightened. Behind her she heard Jaewa's footsteps slowed to a predatory walk, his breathing controlled but furious. Let me in, she whispered, her accent thickening with panic. Please. The guard looked at his partner, some silent communication passing between them, quick as a heartbeat. Then he opened the door. Adanna stumbled inside. The warmth hit her first. Dry, expensive warmth that smelled of aged whiskey and leather and something deeper, like cedar wood and the kind of cigars that cost more than her monthly consulting fee used to. The space was dimly lit, all dark mahogany and supple leather, with intimate booths scattered around a main floor and a long bar stretching along the left wall, backlit in ethereal blue. Soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers, the kind of music that cost money to listen to live. And the lounge was occupied. Men in tailored suits sat at scattered booths and high tables, their conversations pausing mid-sentence as the door sealed behind her. Crystal glasses caught the amber light. Faces turned toward her, not with concern but with the calm, assessing interest of predators who'd just detected movement in their territory. This wasn't a public restaurant. This was somewhere private. Adanna's breath came in short gasps, her heels dripping onto polished hardwood that probably cost more per square foot than her entire security deposit. She pressed her portfolio against her chest like a shield, suddenly aware of how she must look, wild-eyed, rain-dampened, stumbling into a space where everyone else radiated controlled power. A man at the bar raised his glass slightly, one eyebrow arched. 2 others at a corner booth exchanged glances, their conversation dying completely. The bartender, silver-haired, immaculate in a black vest, watched her with the stillness of someone deciding whether she was a threat or entertainment. I'm sorry, Adanna started, her professional voice cracking back into place despite her racing heart. I didn't mean to. The frosted glass doors burst open behind her. Jae stood in the entrance, rain dripping from his designer coat, his chest heaving. His eyes locked onto her with the possessive fury of a man who'd been denied what he believed he owned. Adanna. Her name came out like a command. Enough of this childish running. We're going home. The temperature in the room shifted. The jazz kept playing, but every conversation had stopped. The men at the tables didn't move, but their attention sharpened, not on her anymore, but on the man who just violated the sanctity of their space with raised voices and demands. One of the guards from outside stepped in behind Jae, hand hovering near his jacket. "Sir, this is a private establishment. I don't care what this is." Jae took a step forward, his focus never leaving Adanna. "That's my wife. She's not well. I'm taking her home." "Ex-wife," Adanna corrected, her voice steadier than she felt. He took a step back. "The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. A piece of paper doesn't end what we have." Jae moved closer, his tone dropping to that dangerous softness she knew too well. "You know that, Adanna. Stop making a scene and come with me. We can talk about this at home." Home. Where the walls had witnessed her humiliation. Where his talking ended with her wrist twisted and his hand on her throat. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Jae's jaw tightened. His hand reached for her arm. And a voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "Is there a problem here?" The voice came from the back of the lounge, deep, calm, and carrying the kind of authority that didn't need volume. Every head turned toward a private booth partially obscured by ambient shadow and amber light. A man rose from the leather seat with the unhurried grace of someone who had never needed to rush for anything in his life. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit so perfectly tailored it looked like it had been sewn onto him. His crisp white shirt contrasted sharply with something dark at his collar, ink that curved up his neck in deliberate patterns. Juice. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand, the amber liquid catching the light. His other hand rested casually in his pocket, but there was nothing casual about his presence. His dark eyes swept the room with practiced assessment before settling on Jae with the cold focus of a man cataloging a threat. The bartender straightened imperceptibly. The men at the tables shifted in their seats, their body language subtly deferential. This was his domain. Jae's hand froze inches from Adanna's arm. For the first time since bursting through the door, uncertainty flickered across his face. "This doesn't concern you," Jae said, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "This is a private matter between me and my wife." The man took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving Jae's face. When he lowered the glass, his expression remained perfectly neutral, which somehow made him more intimidating than any scowl could have. "Your wife." It wasn't a question. His gaze shifted to Adanna, taking in her defensive posture, her white-knuckled grip on her portfolio, the barely concealed fear beneath her defiant expression. "Is that true?" Adanna's throat felt tight. Every instinct screamed that she'd traded one dangerous situation for another. But there was something in the man's eyes, a question, not an assumption. He was asking her, not accepting Jae's claim at face value. "No," she said clearly. "He's my ex-husband. I came in here to get away from him." The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the atmosphere. He set his whiskey glass down on the booth table with deliberate care, then took 2 measured steps forward. "Then I believe the lady has made her position clear." His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the silk. "This is a private establishment. Members and invited guests only." His eyes fixed on Jae. "You're neither." Jae's face flushed. "You don't know who I am. My family." "I know exactly who you are, Prosecutor Kim Jae." The man's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Your father is Deputy Minister Kim. Your mother sits on 3 corporate boards. You graduated Seoul National University, passed the bar on your 2nd attempt, and currently handle low-priority cases in the Gangnam office while living off your family's reputation." The color drained from Jae's face. "So when I tell you to leave," the man continued, his voice dropping to something that made the air feel heavier, "understand that I'm being polite." Once. The guard at the door stepped closer to Jae, no longer asking. Jae's eyes darted between the tattooed man, the guard, and Adanna. His jaw worked, fury and humiliation warring across his features. Finally, he took a step back toward the door. "This isn't over, Adanna," he said quietly. "You can't hide from me." Then he turned and left, the frosted glass doors closing behind him with a soft click. The silence that followed felt profound. Adanna's knees threatened to buckle as adrenaline drained from her system. She locked them, refusing to show weakness in front of a room full of strangers who were still watching her with that same predatory assessment. The tattooed man turned his full attention to her, and Adanna realized that being the object of his focus was its own kind of danger. "You should sit down," he said, gesturing toward his booth. It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't exactly a suggestion either. "Before you fall down." Adanna stared at the booth, at the man with tattoos curving up his neck and eyes that held the weight of unspoken violence. Sitting down felt like surrendering control, but her legs were trembling and her heels felt like they'd walked through fire. She took one unsteady step toward the offered seat. The frosted glass doors burst open. Jae-Woo stormed back in, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. The guard tried to block him, but Jae-Woo shoved past with the reckless fury of a man whose pride had been wounded in front of witnesses. "I'm not leaving without her," he snarled, his voice cracking with desperation. "Adanna, enough. You're coming home. Now." He lunged forward, his hand reaching for her arm with the same proprietary grip she'd felt 1,000 times before. Fingers that dug in, that left marks, that reminded her she was his possession. Time seemed to fracture. One moment, Adanna was frozen in place, her body remembering every time she'd been grabbed, pulled, controlled. The next she was moving, but not by her own volition. Tae-Ho moved with fluid precision. His hand caught her wrist, gently, nothing like Jae-Woo's grip, and he pulled her smoothly into the booth beside him. Before she could process what was happening, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, drawing her against his chest with the unmistakable possessiveness of a territorial claim. She landed against solid muscle, the scent of expensive cologne and whiskey enveloping her. His suit jacket was warm beneath her cheek. His arm across her shoulders was heavy but not constraining, protective, not possessive. Jae-Woo froze mid-reach, his hand suspended in empty air. Tae-Ho looked up at him with eyes like black ice. His whiskey glass remained steady in his free hand, as if pulling a woman into his lap was nothing more consequential than adjusting his cufflinks. "She's occupied," Tae-Ho said, his voice carrying that same deadly calm. "As you can see." "Get your hands off my wife," Jae hissed, but uncertainty crept into his voice. His eyes darted around the room, finally registering what Adanna had already sensed. The atmosphere had changed. Every man in the lounge had shifted. The two at the corner booth set down their drinks with synchronized precision. The man at the bar turned on his stool, his jacket falling open to reveal something dark at his hip. The bartender's hand disappeared beneath the counter. They weren't moving aggressively. They were simply ready, waiting for a signal from the man whose arm was draped protectively around Adanna's shoulders. "Ex-wife," Tae-Ho corrected, his tone conversational but edged with something that made the hair on Adanna's neck stand up. "The lady was very clear about that. Twice." Joe's hands clenched into fists. "This is none of your business. You don't know who you're dealing with." "My father." "Your father," Tae-Ho interrupted softly, "is a political appointee who survives by not making enemies he can't afford." He took a slow sip of whiskey, his arm never moving from Adanna's shoulders. "I'd suggest you consider whether I'm one of those enemies." "You're threatening me?" Jae-Woo's voice rose, but his feet had stopped moving forward. "You think you can just—" "I'm not threatening you." Tae-Ho's lips curved slightly. "I'm informing you. The lady has made her choice. She's under my protection now." His fingers flexed against Adanna's shoulder, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of ownership. "If you'd like to challenge that." He paused, his eyes holding Jae-Woo's with the absolute certainty of a man who'd never lost a confrontation that mattered. "Let him try." The 3 words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. They weren't loud. They weren't shouted. They were simply inevitable. Around the room, men straightened in their seats. The guard at the door took 2 steps closer to Jae-wha. The bartender's hand stayed beneath the counter. Jae-wha looked at Adanna, his eyes desperate and furious. "You're choosing him? A criminal? You don't even know." "I know enough," Adanna heard herself say, her voice steadier than she'd expected. Pressed against Tae-Ho's chest, feeling the controlled power in the arm around her shoulders, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Maybe it was an illusion. Maybe she was trading one cage for another. But right now, in this moment, Jae-wha couldn't touch her. And that was everything. Jae-wha's jaw worked. His hands trembled, with rage or humiliation or fear. Adanna couldn't tell. Finally, he took a step backward, then another. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and venomous. "You think you can hide behind him? I'll destroy you both." Tae-Ho said nothing. He simply watched Jae-wha retreat with the patient attention of a predator allowing prey to flee, for now. The guard opened the door. Jae-wha left, his exit far less dramatic than his entrance. This time the door stayed closed. The lounge emptied with the quiet efficiency of a well-rehearsed exit. One by one, the men at the tables stood, adjusted their suits, and disappeared through a door at the back of the room. No words exchanged. No glances at Adanna. Just the synchronized departure of people who knew when business required privacy. The bartender wiped down the counter, poured 2 fingers of something amber into a fresh glass and set it on a tray. He brought it to the booth, placed it beside Tae-Ho's empty glass and vanished through the same back door. Then the lounge was silent except for the soft jazz and the sound of Adanna's breathing. She was still pressed against Tae-Ho's chest, his arm around her shoulders. Now that the adrenaline was fading, she became acutely aware of the intimacy of the position. The warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the faint scent of his cologne mixed with whiskey and something darker like smoke. She should move. Pull away. Put distance between herself and this stranger who just claimed her in front of witnesses. But her body wouldn't cooperate. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave, days of running, of fear, of looking over her shoulder catching up all at once. Tae-Ho's arm shifted. Not tightening but releasing. "You can sit up now," he said quietly. "He's gone." Adanna straightened, sliding to the opposite side of the booth. Her portfolio landed on the leather seat between them like a barrier. She smoothed her blazer, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, tried to reassemble the professional mask that had shattered the moment she'd run through those doors. Tae-Ho reached for the fresh glass, then paused. He slid it across the table toward her instead. "You look like you need this more than I do." Adanna stared at the whiskey. This was where it would start, wasn't it? The expectations. The demands. The price for his protection that would turn out to be exactly what she'd been running from, just dressed in a more expensive suit. "I don't drink," she said, her voice hoarse. "Then don't." He poured his own glass from the bottle the bartender had left. "But you should sit for a few more minutes before you try to walk. Your hands are shaking." She looked down. He was right. Tae-Ho took a sip of his whiskey, studying her over the rim of his glass. His expression was unreadable, not cold, not warm, just assessing. "You're wondering what I want," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Adanna said, because there was no point in pretending. "Men like you don't help women like me without expecting something in return." "Men like me." His lips curved slightly. "And what kind of man am I?" "Dangerous." She met his eyes. "Powerful. Connected. The kind of man who makes people disappear with 3 words." "Let him try," Tae-Ho quoted softly. He set his glass down. "Yes, I am all of those things. Which is why I'm going to be honest with you, Miss Adanna. Adanna Okafor. Miss Okafor." He leaned back against the leather, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "I do want something from you. But probably not what you're expecting." Here it comes, Adanna thought. The proposition. The offer to be his mistress, his plaything, his exotic acquisition. She'd heard variations of it before. From businessmen, from Jaewa's colleagues, from men who saw a foreign woman and assumed availability. I'm expanding my business into West Africa, Tae-Ho said. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. I need someone who understands the culture, the business etiquette, the social dynamics. Someone who can advise me on how to approach partnerships without causing offense or appearing ignorant. He picked up his glass again. I need a cultural consultant. And you need legal protection, documentation, and a reason to stay in Korea that your ex-husband can't challenge. Adanna blinked. You want to hire me? Yes. As a consultant. A well-compensated consultant with a proper work visa, legal documentation and security. He gestured to the empty lounge. You'd have access to my resources. My lawyers. My protection. It was too good to be true. Which meant it was a trap. What's the cost? Adanna asked. Really? Tae-Ho's expression didn't change. Your expertise. Your time. Your presence in my world. He paused, his voice dropping. And the acceptance of risk. I have enemies, Miss Okafor. If they know you work for me, they might try to use you against me. You'd be under constant security. Your movements monitored. Your communications filtered. He leaned forward slightly. I won't lie to you, it's a cage. But I promise you'll have more freedom in my cage than you ever had with him. Adanna's throat felt tight. Why me? You could hire anyone. Because you ran into my lounge dripping rain and terror, and when your ex-husband tried to drag you back, you told him no. Tae-Ho's eyes held hers. Because you're still sitting here asking questions instead of crying or throwing yourself at my mercy. Because I need someone strong enough to survive my world. He raised his glass. So, what's your answer, Miss Okafor? Adanna's answer had been yes. Not because she trusted Tae-Ho, she didn't. Not because she believed in fairy tales where dangerous men turned into saviors. She'd learned better. But because the alternative was returning to hiding, to fear, to the constant weight of Jaewa's surveillance closing around her like a fist. At least here the cage came with keys. Tae-Ho made a single phone call. 5 minutes later, the back door opened and a man entered who looked like he'd been carved from granite and disappointment. Gwang-soo, Tae-Ho said by way of introduction. My head of security. He runs operations here. Gwang-soo was perhaps 60. With silver hair cut military short and a face that suggested he'd seen every possible variation of human stupidity and been unimpressed by all of them. He wore a black suit that strained slightly across shoulders built for violence, and his eyes, sharp and colorless as winter sky, assessed Adanna with the clinical efficiency of someone calculating threat levels and exit strategies. Miss Okafor, he said, his voice like gravel. A slight bow, precise and minimal. Welcome. The word didn't sound particularly welcoming. Gwang-soo will arrange your security detail and living arrangements, Tae-Ho continued. You'll follow his protocols. No exceptions. Protocols, Adanna repeated. Gwang-soo's expression didn't change. You don't leave the building without escort. You don't meet anyone we haven't vetted. You don't discuss your work, your location, or your employer with anyone outside this organization. He paused. And you don't touch anything in the lounge after midnight. That's when we clean. The way he said clean suggested it wasn't about mopping floors. Understood, Adanna said, because arguing with a man who looked like he'd buried bodies before breakfast seemed counterproductive. Gwang-soo's eyes flickered with something that might have been approval. Your driver is waiting outside. Min-ki looked about 23 and entirely too cheerful to be working for a man called the Great Shadow. He stood beside a black sedan, wearing a suit that fit well but not perfectly, and when he saw Adanna emerge from the lounge he smiled, an actual genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Miss Okafor. He opened the rear door with a slight bow. I'm Min-ki. I'll be your driver and, Well, your shadow, I guess. He laughed at his own joke. Get it? Because the boss is called. I got it, Guangsu said flatly from behind Adanna. Min-Ki's smile didn't falter. Right. Anyway, I'll take you upstairs to your suite. You must be exhausted. Adanna slid into the car, her exhaustion a physical weight now that the adrenaline had fully burned off. Min-Ki drove them approximately 30 seconds around the corner to a discreet entrance flanked by 2 more men in black suits. The lounge and the residential floors share a building, Min-Ki explained as they rode the elevator. Boss owns the whole thing. Lounge on ground level, private offices and meeting rooms on 2 and 3, residences on 4 through 6. The elevator opened directly into a hallway with only 3 doors. Guangsu unlocked the middle one. Adanna stepped into a space that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Gangnam's glittering skyline. Modern furniture in warm neutrals. Cream sofa, charcoal chairs, a glass coffee table that probably cost more than her entire previous apartment. A kitchen with marble countertops. A bedroom visible through an open door, the bed already made with hotel crisp linens. It was beautiful, sophisticated, expensive, and it felt like a very elegant prison. Keys, Guangsu said, pressing a set into her palm. Front door, building entrance and the lounge's private entrance. You're free to come and go as needed, but inform Min-Ki or myself first. Adanna stared at the keys in her hand. I can leave. You work for Mr. Tae-Ho. You're not his prisoner. Guangsu's expression remained neutral. But you are his responsibility. Which means we need to know where you are and who you're with. For your protection. And if I decide to walk away tomorrow? Then you walk away, Guangsu said simply. Though I'd suggest waiting until we've dealt with your ex-husband's situation. Mr. Tae-Ho doesn't start projects he doesn't finish. Min-Ki shifted uncomfortably. There's a laptop on the desk with secure access to our systems. Password is taped underneath, you should change it. And, there's clothes in the closet. Mr. Tae-Ho had someone estimate your size. Of course he did. One more thing, Guangsu said as he and Min-Ki moved toward the door. The organization has rules. Respect is earned through competence, not given for free. Loyalty is everything, betray it and you're done. And Mr. Tae-Ho's word is law. He paused at the threshold. But earn your place here, Miss Okafor, and you'll have more protection than any police force could provide. The door closed. Adanna stood in her beautiful cage, keys heavy in her hand, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. The first meeting happened 3 days after Adanna moved into the suite. Min-Ki appeared at her door at 11:47 p.m. with an apologetic smile. Boss wants to see you. In the booth. Adanna had been reviewing files on her laptop. Information Guangsu had provided about Tae-Ho's planned expansion into Lagos. She closed the screen, grabbed her portfolio and followed Min-Ki downstairs. The lounge was different after midnight. Empty of patrons, the space felt larger, more intimate. The blue-lit bar cast shadows across empty tables. The jazz had been replaced by silence broken only by the quiet clink of Guangsu's team checking security monitors in the back office. Tae-Ho sat in his usual booth, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The tattoos on his forearms were visible now, intricate patterns that disappeared beneath the fabric. 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey waited on the table. Miss Okafor. He gestured to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming. It's almost midnight, Adanna said, sliding into the booth. Do you always work these hours? The hours when the world is quiet are the best for thinking. He poured 2 glasses. And you're Nigerian. I assumed you were still awake. That's a stereotype, Adanna said, but she was smiling despite herself. Is it wrong? No, but you shouldn't assume. Tae-Ho's lips curved. Noted. Shall we begin? They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Midnight meetings. Whiskey she still didn't drink but accepted anyway. Tae-Ho would outline his business plans. shipping routes, potential partners, investment opportunities, and Adanna would explain why half of them would fail spectacularly. You can't just show up to a meeting in Lagos with contracts ready to sign, she said one night, 3 weeks into their arrangement. That's not how business works there. You build relationship first. You meet the family. You share a meal. You prove you're trustworthy. That's inefficient, Tae-Ho observed. That's culture. Adanna leaned back against the leather. You want efficiency, do business in Tokyo. You want to succeed in West Africa, you need patience. I'm not known for patience. I've noticed. She gestured to his half-empty glass. You've been drinking the same whiskey for 40 minutes. That's the longest I've seen you take with anything. Tae-Ho looked at his glass, then at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Perhaps I'm learning. By the 4th week, Adanna had stopped bringing her portfolio. She knew the material by heart now. The business customs, the negotiation styles, the unspoken hierarchies that governed West African commerce. Instead she brought stories. My father once spent 6 hours drinking palm wine with a potential partner before they even mentioned business, she said one night, accepting the whiskey glass out of habit now. Turned out the man's daughter was getting married. My father was invited to the wedding. They closed the deal 3 months later at the reception. 3 months, Tae-Ho repeated. 3 months of relationship building. And that partnership lasted 20 years. Adanna swirled the whiskey she still hadn't tasted. But you know what the secret was? My father genuinely liked the man. He didn't fake interest. He didn't pretend. He actually cared about the daughter's wedding. And if he hadn't liked the man, then he would have walked away. Adanna met Tae-Ho's eyes. Some partnerships aren't worth the cost no matter how profitable they look on paper. Tae-Ho was quiet for a moment. Is that advice for business or for life? Both. He smiled then. A real smile, not the calculated curve of lips he used for intimidation. It transformed his face, softening the sharp edges, reaching his eyes. You're very good at this, he said. At consulting? At reminding me I'm human. Adanna felt warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the whiskey. You know what's absurd? What? 2 weeks ago I was running through the rain from my ex-husband. Now I'm sitting in a mob boss's private booth teaching him how to make friends. She laughed, the sound surprising herself. My life is ridiculous. Tae-Ho's smile widened. Mine too. The booth felt smaller suddenly. The amber light warmer. The distance between them across the table somehow more noticeable. Guangsu appeared from the back office, clearing his throat. Sir. The Lagos contact is on the line. The moment shattered. Tae-Ho stood, rolling his sleeves down. Same time tomorrow? It's already tomorrow, Adanna said, checking her watch. It's 2 a.m. Then same time tonight. She gathered her things, but at the edge of the booth she paused. Tae-Ho. He looked up. Thank you. For this. For all of it. You're earning your place, Miss Okafor, he said quietly. No thanks necessary. But the way he watched her leave suggested otherwise. The Lagos deal closed at 1:47 a.m. Seoul time. Tae-Ho ended the video call, leaned back in the booth, and for the first time since Adanna had met him, he laughed. A genuine, unguarded sound that echoed through the empty lounge. You were right, he said, refilling both their glasses. 6 weeks of relationship building. Dinners. Stories. Family photos. And they signed. I told you. Adanna couldn't help her own smile. Patience pays. To patience then. Tae-Ho raised his glass. This time Adanna raised hers too. The whiskey burned going down, but warmth followed, spreading through her chest, loosening the constant tension she'd carried for months. Tae-Ho shrugged off his jacket, tossing it carelessly onto the seat beside him. His tie followed. Then he rolled his sleeves higher than usual, revealing the full scope of the ink that had only been suggested before. Adanna's breath caught. The tattoos weren't random. They were a story written in black and gray across his skin, intricate patterns that flowed from his neck down his shoulder, wrapping around his forearm. But dominating everything was the tiger. It curved from behind his ear, down the column of his throat, across his collarbone, its head resting over his heart with fangs bared and eyes that seemed to follow movement. "It's beautiful," Adanna said before she could stop herself. "The tiger. What does it mean?" Tae-Ho looked down at his arm as if seeing it for the first time. "A reminder." "Of what?" He was quiet for a long moment, his finger tracing the rim of his glass. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I wasn't always the great shadow. I was just Tae-Ho, youngest son of a small restaurant owner in Itaewon. My older brother was supposed to inherit everything." He paused. "Then he borrowed money from the wrong people. Tried to expand too fast. When he couldn't pay, they came for him." Adanna's chest tightened. She knew where this story ended. "I was 19. I begged them for time, for mercy. They laughed." Tae-Ho's jaw clenched. "So I stopped begging. I learned their world. I became better at it than they were. I paid back everyone my brother owed, and then I took everything they had." "The tiger," Adanna said quietly. "Their boss had a tiger tattooed on his back. After I removed him, I had this done." He touched the tiger's head over his heart. "So I'd never forget that mercy is weakness in this world. That shadows survive when the light gets people killed. That's why they call you the Great Shadow. Because I learned to move in darkness. To strike from places people don't see coming." He finally looked at her. "To protect what's mine by being the most dangerous thing in the room." Adanna understood that language. The weaponization of survival. She'd done it too, just differently. "I came to Seoul with dreams," she heard herself say. The whiskey had loosened something inside her, or maybe it was just him. This man who'd shown her his scars first. "I was going to build a consulting firm. Bridge African and Asian markets. Make my father proud." "What happened?" "Jaewa happened." She touched the scar on her wrist unconsciously. "He was charming at first. Kind of. He said he admired my ambition. Then we got married, and suddenly my ambition was unfeminine. My clients were inappropriate. My dreams were unrealistic. He tried to make you small. He succeeded. For a while." Adanna's voice hardened. "I learned to control what I could. My appearance, my words, my reactions. I became perfect, polished, exactly what he wanted. Because control meant survival. But you left." "I left when I realized I'd become a ghost." She met Tae-Ho's eyes. "I'd controlled myself right out of existence. So I stopped being perfect. I filed for divorce. I reclaimed my name, my work, my life. And he couldn't accept that. Men like him never do." Tae-Ho reached across the table. His fingers brushed the scar on her wrist, gentle, questioning. "From him. From fighting back. Finally." His hand covered hers completely, warm and solid. "You're not a ghost, Adanna. You're a survivor who learned to weaponize control differently than I did. You turned it inward. I turned it outward." His thumb traced small circles on her skin. "But we're both still here. Still fighting. Still surviving." The booth felt impossibly small. The whiskey had blurred the edges of professional distance. Adanna could see the pulse at Tae-Ho's throat, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his eyes had softened from ice to something warmer. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Are you lonely?" The question seemed to surprise him. His hand stilled on hers. "Yes," he said finally. "Are you?" "Yes." They sat in silence, hands touching across the table, two people who'd survived by different means recognizing something fundamental in each other. Guangsu's voice crackled over the intercom, shattering the moment. "Sir. Security sweep complete." Tae-Ho withdrew his hand slowly. "Same time tomorrow?" But Adanna heard the real question underneath. "Yes," she said. Tomorrow. The alarm started at 2:14 a.m. Not loud. Tae-Ho's organization was too sophisticated for that. Just a low pulse of sound and red lights flickering across the lounge's security panels. But the effect was immediate. Gwang-soo appeared from the back office, phone already to his ear, his face grim. Breach. Building perimeter. Get to the safe room. Now. Tae-Ho was already moving, his hand catching Adanna's wrist. Come with me. They went through a door behind the bar that Adanna had never noticed, down a narrow hallway, through another door that opened only to Tae-Ho's fingerprint. The room beyond was small, windowless, reinforced walls, security monitors covering every angle of the building, a sofa, a desk, supplies that suggested long stays. The door sealed behind them with a heavy click. What's happening? Adanna demanded, her heart hammering. Tae-Ho was already at the monitors, his jaw tight. Someone tried to access the residential floors. Used a security code that was deactivated 2 weeks ago. His eyes narrowed. Only 3 people knew that code. One of them talked. Jae-wha. Likely. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Gwang-soo's team is sweeping now. We wait here until they confirm it's clear. The room felt smaller by the second. Adanna sank onto the sofa, her hands trembling. She'd known this was possible. Tae-Ho had warned her his enemies might target her. She just hadn't expected Jae-wha to become one of them this quickly. I'm sorry, she said quietly. This is my fault. If I hadn't. Don't. Tae-Ho's voice was sharp. He crossed to her in 2 strides, crouching so they were eye level. This is his fault. Not yours. Never yours. But if someone in your organization betrayed you because of me, then they'll be dealt with. Something dark flickered across his face. Permanently. The word hung between them. Permanent. Final. The kind of solution Tae-Ho specialized in. Adanna's stomach twisted. You're going to kill them. I'm going to protect what's mine. His eyes held hers. That includes you now. By killing people. Yes. The honesty was brutal. No softening, no excuses. Just the cold reality of the world she'd stepped into. Adanna stood, needing distance. The room was too small for it, but she tried anyway, pacing to the monitors and back. This is what you meant, isn't it? About the cost. Yes. Violence. Blood. People dying because I'm here. People who chose betrayal. Tae-Ho stood, his voice hardening. But yes. This is my world, Adanna. This is what protection looks like in the dark. I can keep you safe from your ex-husband, from anyone who tries to hurt you. But the cost is living with what I have to do to make that happen. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. So I need you to be honest with me. Can you live with this? Me. With the violence and the constant vigilance and the enemies who won't hesitate to use you against me. Adanna's breath caught. The question wasn't theoretical anymore. It was immediate, real, unavoidable. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I could. But hearing you say you'll kill someone so casually. There's nothing casual about it. Tae-Ho's jaw clenched. Every decision I make carries weight. Every life I take haunts me. But I do it anyway because the alternative is losing what I've built. Losing the people I protect. Losing me. Yes. The admission seemed to cost him something. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, Adanna saw uncertainty there. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. If I stay, if I choose this life, this world, can you accept that I'll never be a possession? That I'm not something you own, even if I'm something you protect? Tae-Ho was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I pulled you into my booth that first night and claimed you in front of witnesses. I gave you protection, yes. But I also took your choice away. Made you mine without asking if you wanted to be. You gave me keys, Adanna countered. Freedom to leave. A choice, even if it was limited. Limited choice isn't freedom. It's more than I had with him. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. But it's not enough. If I stay, I need to be your partner, Tae-Ho. Not your possession. Not your responsibility. Your equal. In this world, equals don't exist. Then maybe we create a new world. His eyes widened slightly. Then his hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. You're asking me to change everything I know. You're asking me to accept violence I've never lived with. Fair enough. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. So we both bend. Both compromise. Can you do that? For you. His forehead touched hers. I'll try. The intercom crackled. Sir. Building secure. Threat neutralized. One casualty, ours. The breach was deliberate. Tae-Ho's expression hardened instantly. I'm coming up. But before he could move, Adanna caught his hand. When you deal with whoever did this, she said quietly, remember I chose to stay. Don't make me regret it. His fingers tightened on hers. I won't. She wasn't sure she believed him. The lounge had been transformed. 6 weeks of planning culminated in this. Crystal stemware catching candlelight, the blue-lit bar dimmed to ambient glow, private tables arranged for intimate conversation. The delegation from Lagos, 3 investors and their advisors, occupied the central space, their laughter mixing with carefully curated Afrobeat jazz. Adanna moved between tables in a gold dress that honored her heritage without performing it, her natural hair styled in elegant twists. She was in her element, translating not just language but context, smoothing cultural gaps with stories and shared references. Mr. Okonkwo, she said to the lead investor, refilling his wine personally, Tae-Ho mentioned your daughter just completed her MBA. My sister studied at the same program. Okonkwo's face lit up. Adanna said, truly. Class of 2023. Adanna smiled. She said Professor Chen's course on emerging markets changed her life. Chioma said the same thing. Okonkwo laughed, turning to Tae-Ho. You told me you hired a consultant. You didn't mention you'd found family. Tae-Ho, impeccable in a navy suit that made his tattoos seem more artistic than threatening, inclined his head. Miss Okafor has been invaluable. She's taught me that business is built on more than contracts. On trust, Okonkwo agreed, raising his glass. To partnerships built on trust. They drank. The deal was as good as signed. Then the doors opened. Joa walked in like he owned the place, flanked by 2 men in cheap suits trying to look official. His eyes found Adanna immediately, and his smile was the kind that preceded violence. Guangsu moved to intercept, but Jae-Wha held up a leather folder. I'm here on official business, he announced loudly, his voice carrying across the lounge. Representing the Kim family legal team. The dinner conversations died. Tae-Ho remained seated, but his stillness became predatory. You're interrupting a private event. I'm pursuing a criminal. Jae-Wha's smile widened. He looked directly at the Nigerian investors. Gentlemen, I apologize for the intrusion, but you should know. The woman advising you is wanted for embezzlement. She stole from my family's business before fleeing the country. Adanna's blood turned to ice. Okonkwo looked at her, concern replacing warmth. Is this true? No, Adanna said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. He's lying. I have documents. Jae-Wha opened the folder, spreading papers across the nearest table. Bank transfers. Account numbers. Her name forged across authorization forms. 2 million won transferred to offshore accounts. All signed by Miss Okafor while she was still my wife. The papers looked official. Professional. Convincing. Adanna, Tae-Ho said quietly. She met his eyes, seeing the question there. Trust me. These are fabrications, she said clearly. I never had access to the Kim family accounts. I never worked for their business. This is harassment from an ex-husband who can't accept divorce. Harassment. Jaewa's mask cracked, fury bleeding through. I'm trying to protect these investors from a thief. From someone who used her position to steal. Enough. The word came from Gwang-soo, who'd materialized beside Jaewa with his own folder. This one significantly thicker. Prosecutor Kim, Gwang-soo said, his voice like granite. I suggest you reconsider your accusations. Jaewa paled. What is this? Evidence. Gwang-soo spread his documents across the table, methodical and devastating. Of your embezzlement from the prosecution office. Your acceptance of bribes from defendants. Your falsification of case records. He laid down more papers. Evidence of your family's tax evasion. Your father's illegal campaign financing. Your mother's insider trading. All compiled over the past 6 weeks and submitted to the Financial Supervisory Service this morning. Jaewa grabbed for the papers. His hands shook. You can't. We can. Tae-Ho stood, moving around the table with lethal grace. Your family's business is under investigation. Your father has been asked to resign. Your mother's board positions are suspended pending review. And you, he smiled, cold and final, you're facing charges that will destroy what's left of your career. You have no proof I did anything. We have everything. Gwang-soo's voice was almost gentle. Every bribe you accepted. Every case you threw. Every law you broke while hiding behind your family name. 6 weeks of investigation, Prosecutor Kim. We've been very thorough. Jaewa's face went from pale to crimson. This is because of her? You're destroying my family over some foreign. Tae-Ho moved faster than Adanna had ever seen him move. One moment Jaewa was speaking. The next, Tae-Ho's hand was wrapped around his throat, slamming him against the wall beside the bar. Finish that sentence, Tae-Ho said softly, and Gwang-soo won't be able to protect you from me. The lounge was silent except for Jaewa's strangled breathing. Miss Okafor is under my protection, Tae-Ho continued, his voice deadly calm. She works for me. She advises me. And if you ever come near her again, there won't be enough of you left to prosecute. He released Jaewa, who crumpled against the wall. Gwang-soo. Remove him. 2 guards appeared, hauling Jaewa toward the exit. At the threshold, he looked back at Adanna one last time, fury and desperation and something that might have been grief warring across his face. Then he was gone. The silence stretched. Finally, Okonkwo cleared his throat. Well, he said, that was dramatic. Tae-Ho turned back to the table, his expression smoothing into professional calm. My apologies, gentlemen. As you can see, Miss Okafor has dealt with considerable harassment. I hope this demonstration of our commitment to protecting our people reassures you about the security of our partnership. Okonkwo studied Tae-Ho for a long moment. Then he smiled. Mr. Tae-Ho, I think we're going to work very well together. The authorities arrived 20 minutes after Gwang-soo's call. Not regular police. Tae-Ho's connections ran deeper than that. Financial crimes investigators, pristine in their government-issued suits, with warrant folders thick enough to bury the Kim family legacy permanently. Adanna watched from the lounge windows as they escorted Jaewa to an unmarked car. His hands weren't cuffed, that courtesy remained for now, but his shoulders were slumped, his face ashen. He looked up at the building once as if he could see her through the tinted glass. Then the car door closed and he was gone. The investors left through the private exit, Gwang-soo reported, appearing at Adanna's shoulder. Happy. The contract is signed. Mr. Okonkwo said to tell you your sister would be proud. Adanna's throat tightened. Thank you. Boss wants to see you. The booth. Of course he did. Tae-Ho sat in the same seat where she'd first stumbled into his protection. Jacket off, tie loosened, whiskey glass half empty. The lounge was quiet now, cleaned of the dinner's evidence. Just amber light and shadows and the soft blue glow from the bar. He looked up when she approached and something in his expression made her heart stutter. Sit, he said gently. Adanna slid into the booth opposite him, the leather familiar now. You dismantled his entire life. Yes. For me. For you. Tae-Ho poured a second glass, pushed it across the table. And because he needed to learn that some cages can't be escaped by breaking other people. Adanna accepted the whiskey, her hands steadier than they'd been in months. What happens now? That depends on you. Tae-Ho leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. I have something for you. He pulled a slim folder from beside him, placed it on the table between them. New identity. Canadian passport. You mentioned once you liked Vancouver. Bank account with enough money to start over anywhere you want. Legal documentation that erases your connection to both Jae-Wha and me. Adanna stared at the folder. I don't understand. You came into my lounge running from a man who tried to own you. I offered you protection, but I also claimed you, pulled you into my world without asking if you wanted to stay. His jaw tightened. This is me giving you the choice I should have offered from the beginning. The choice to leave. The choice to be free. He tapped the folder. Take this and you walk away clean. No debt. No obligation. No looking over your shoulder for either of us. Adanna's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The passport photo was hers. When had he taken it? The name was new, Maya Chin. The bank statements showed numbers that would let her live comfortably for years. It was perfect. It was everything she'd needed 6 weeks ago. Or, Tae-Ho said quietly, you stay. She looked up. Not as my employee. Not as someone I protect out of obligation or guilt. But as my partner, in business, in this world, in everything. His hand moved across the table, palm up, offering. I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you normal. But I can promise you'll never be possessed again. You'll be chosen. Every day. By me. And if I choose to stay, Adanna said, her voice barely above a whisper, what does that make me? Wine. The word was soft but absolute. And me yours. The folder sat between them, freedom in paper and ink. A life where she'd never have to navigate lounge politics or midnight meetings or the casual violence of Tae-Ho's world. A life alone. Adanna closed the folder. I choose you, she said. Something flashed across Tae-Ho's face. Relief, wonder, something that looked almost like fear. You're sure? I'm sure. She stood, moving around the table to his side of the booth. I spent 2 years being owned. 6 weeks being protected. I'm tired of being passive in my own life. She slid onto the leather beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. So I'm choosing. Actively. Deliberately. She met his eyes. I'm choosing the shadow. Tae-Ho's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. You understand what you're accepting? The danger. The violence, the enemies, the constant vigilance. Yes. Adanna's hand covered his. But I'm also accepting midnight whiskey conversations. Someone who listens when I talk. A partner who sees me as equal, not property. Adanna. Pull me close, she whispered. Like you did that first night. But this time not for protection. His arm wrapped around her shoulders, drawing her against his chest. But this time there was no threat to defend against. No ex-husband to intimidate. Just them in the booth where it all began, choosing each other. This time, Tae-Ho murmured against her hair, it's a promise. What kind of promise? That you'll never be alone in the dark again. That my shadow covers us both. Adanna tilted her face up. Then kiss me, Tae-Ho. And make it real. He did. His lips met hers, soft at first, questioning, still giving her room to change her mind. But Adanna leaned in, her hand sliding up to trace the tiger tattoo at his neck. And the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. The blue lights of the bar glowed behind them. Whiskey glasses sat forgotten on the table. The lounge was silent except for their breathing, the soft jazz having long since stopped. When they finally broke apart, Tae-Ho's forehead rested against hers. No regrets, he asked. Not one, Adanna said. You. Only that I didn't ask you to stay sooner. She laughed, surprised by the sound, by the lightness spreading through her chest. We had to build trust first. Patience, remember? Patience. He kissed her again, softer this time. You've made me very patient, Adanna Okafor. Good. She settled against his chest, his arms secure around her shoulders. Because this is just the beginning. Outside, Seoul's lights glittered against the night sky. Inside, in the booth where a desperate woman had once stumbled seeking sanctuary, two survivors sat wrapped in shadows and amber light. No longer running, no longer alone. Just choosing each other. Again and again and again.